Imagine a courtroom in the heart of New York City, packed with suits and whispers, where a billionaire's fate hangs by a thread. The air is thick with tension, the kind that makes your chest tighten. Everyone's waiting for a high-priced lawyer to swoop in and save the day. But then a voice cuts through the noise, sharp, steady, and completely unexpected. "I'll defend him," she says. Every head turns. Eyes land on a young black woman standing at the back, her apron still tied around her waist, sweat on her brow, clutching a worn folder like it's her lifeline. Laughter ripples through the crowd. Who is she? A janitor? A maid? But Maya Carter doesn't flinch. At 25, she's about to do what no one in that room could have predicted: challenge a system built to keep people like her silent. This is her story, a tale of courage, truth, and the fight for justice against impossible odds. If stories like this speak to you, hit the like button and subscribe. There's more to come. The room was a sea of smirks and raised eyebrows. Maya Carter stood tall, though her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. She'd spent years cleaning houses, scrubbing floors in mansions like the one owned by Daniel Harper, the tech mogul now slouched at the defendant's table. He was accused of fraud, a $30 million scandal that could ruin him. His legal team? Gone. Vanished on the first day of the hearing, leaving him defenseless. Whispers said his lead lawyer had fled the country. The judge, a stern man with wire-rimmed glasses, blinked at Maya. "Miss Carter, are you a licensed attorney?" "No, Your Honor," she said, her voice steady. "I studied at New York University Law, but left after 2 years. Life got in the way. But I've spent every night since studying this case, every contract, every record. I know it better than anyone here." The prosecutor, a polished woman named Vanessa Reed, scoffed. "This is a mockery of justice," she said. The gallery chuckled, but Maya didn't waver. She stepped forward, her sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. "I may not have a degree, but I have the truth. And right now, that's more than Mr. Harper has." Daniel turned, his scowl cutting through her. "You," he barked, "you should be polishing my silver, not playing lawyer." More laughter. Someone muttered, "Next she'll bring a mop to the bench." But Maya's eyes locked on the judge. "Your Honor, I asked to represent Mr. Harper for this session. I know the evidence. I can prove he's been set up." The room hushed. Even Vanessa tilted her head, curious despite herself. The judge rubbed his temple. "This is irregular, but if Mr. Harper agrees, I'll allow it under supervision." Daniel's face twisted, like he'd bitten a lemon. "Let a maid defend me?" he muttered. Maya leaned in, her voice low. "I'm the only one here not trying to bury you. Trust me, or lose everything." He stared, jaw tight, then waved a hand. "Fine. Do your worst." She nodded, walked to the defense table, and opened her folder. Inside were notes, handwritten, meticulous, with color-coded tabs and case citations. She'd spent years reading law books in her tiny Brooklyn apartment, studying while the world slept. Vanessa smirked. "Brought your grocery list, Miss Carter?" Maya glanced up. "No, ma'am. I brought receipts," gasps echoed. The judge cleared his throat. "Proceed." Maya held up a page. On March 12th last year, Harper Enterprises was asked to revise a joint venture with Summit Partners. That revision, which Ms. Reed claims Mr. Harper forged, was signed from an IP address in Chicago. But the original SEC filing, dated 2 weeks earlier, shows the terms were still valid. If anyone forged anything, it wasn't my client. Vanessa's smile faded. The gallery leaned in, their mockery replaced by something else, curiosity. Maya's voice was clear, her hands steady. She'd read case law on her breaks, listened to legal podcasts while folding laundry. This was her moment. The judge tapped his pen. "We'll recess until tomorrow to review this. Miss Carter, you may return." She bowed slightly, her pulse racing. As she stepped back, she felt their eyes, some doubting, some believing. Daniel stayed silent, but for the first time, he didn't look alone. That night, in her cramped apartment, Maya sat at her kitchen table, legal papers spread out, a half-eaten sandwich beside her. Her apron hung on a chair, stained from the morning's work. The courtroom still echoed in her mind. She sipped cold coffee, her eyes scanning a contract clause. Something about the wording felt off, too polished, not like Daniel's usual deals. She jotted a note, checked Summit's legal team. Her phone buzzed, unknown number. "You made waves today," a voice said, low and amused. "Didn't expect the girl in the apron to shake things up." "Who is this?" Maya asked, her grip tightening. "Someone who knows you're poking a bear." "Be careful, Maya." The call ended. Her hands shook, but she forced herself to breathe. Fear wasn't new. She'd grown up dodging it. Late-night walks through rough streets, eviction notices piling up. But this fear was sharper, colder. She wasn't just fighting for Daniel anymore. She was stepping into a machine that crushed people like her. Maya returned to Daniel's estate the next morning, her gray sweater and jeans a stark contrast to the marble halls. He wasn't expecting her. "I didn't call for you," he said, looking up from his desk. "You didn't call for someone to save your name either," she replied, calm but firm. He stared, then leaned back. "You think one day in court changes anything? I think it opened a crack. We need to widen it." She pulled out a contract copy, pointing to a clause. "This revision was signed while you were at a conference in Napa. Did you read it yourself?" Daniel frowned. "My assistant Tom handles those. I sign what he sends." "Where's Tom now?" she asked. "He quit last month. Said he needed a break." Maya's eyes narrowed. Or he needed to disappear. She left the estate and headed to a midtown office where Tom had once worked. The place was a mess. Papers scattered, a laptop gone. Something felt wrong, like someone had left in a hurry. On the floor, she found a folder with contract drafts, one marked with a Chicago IP address, another with a New Jersey one. Her heart raced. This was proof. Someone had tampered with the documents. Back in court, she presented the drafts. "Your Honor, these contracts show different metadata, suggesting forgery by someone other than my client." Vanessa objected, but the judge allowed a review. Maya pressed on. "The wording in the revised clause uses terms common in European law, not U.S. contracts like Mr. Harper's. This points to an outside hand." The room went quiet. Daniel leaned forward, his mouth slightly open. Vanessa's jaw tightened. "We need time to verify this," she said. Maya held up a forensics report. "Already done. This came from Tom's hard drive. Last accessed the day he vanished." The judge nodded. "This suggests tampering. We'll recess to investigate further." Outside, Maya leaned against a railing, the city buzzing below. Daniel joined her. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't," she said. "Just don't underestimate me again." That night she found an envelope under her apartment door. No name, just Summit's logo. Inside, a memo dated months before the lawsuit, hinting at a plan to pressure Daniel legally. Her pulse quickened. This wasn't just fraud. It was a setup from the start. She tucked the memo into her binder, her mind racing. Summit wasn't just after Daniel's money. They wanted his empire, and they'd weaponized the law to get it. The memo was a bombshell, but Maya knew it wasn't enough. She needed more, something undeniable. She met with an old classmate, Jake, a reporter at a small Brooklyn paper. "I need you to dig into Summit's legal team," she said, over coffee at a diner, quietly. Jake raised an eyebrow. "You're playing with fire, Maya." "I know," she said. "But someone's got to get burned." He slid a folder across the table. "Their lead counsel, Richard Voss, has ties to an offshore firm that crafts legal traps to force buyouts. 2 whistleblowers called them out. One's dead now." "Accident," they said. Maya's stomach twisted. "You sure you want to keep going?" "I don't have a choice," she said. In court the next day she presented the memo. "Your Honor, this outlines a plan by Summit to destabilize Mr. Harper's company through fabricated legal pressure." Vanessa stood, her voice sharp. "This is unverified." Maya didn't blink. It was found in a storage locker rented by Tom Ellis, Harper's former assistant. "We've traced its metadata to Summit's internal network." The judge read in silence, then looked up. "This changes the case's scope. We may be looking at conspiracy." Daniel leaned over, whispering, "You're tearing their world apart." Maya kept her eyes forward. "I'm just getting started." That night her apartment was trashed, papers scattered, a lamp broken. No one took anything, but the message was clear. "Stop." She called Jake from the hallway. "Someone broke in. They're watching me." "Stay at my cousin's place," he said. "Hoboken, quiet." She hesitated, then agreed. In a borrowed apartment filled with old furniture, she pored over the memo again. A name kept popping up. Richard Voss. He'd signed off on every shady deal. She emailed Jake. "Can you trace Voss's IP logs? I need to know he wrote this." Jake replied, 2 days. Maybe less? As she worked, she noticed a man outside, watching from a parked car. Her heart skipped. She'd seen him at the courthouse. They were closing in. She backed up her files, stashing a USB drive in a hollow book, another in her freezer. If they came for her, the truth would survive. By morning, she was back at Daniel's estate. He looked at her, softer now. "You're risking everything." "So are you," she said. He handed her a stack of emails, internal Summit correspondence, leaked by a nervous board member. They showed Voss and Tom plotting late at night, timing signature when Daniel was distracted. Maya read them twice. "They thought you'd never notice." Daniel rubbed his face. "I trusted Tom like family." "Trust is their weapon," she said. In court, she laid out the emails. "Your Honor, these prove Summit's counsel worked with Mr. Harper's assistant to forge documents. The metadata matches their secure servers." Vanessa's face paled. "We need a delay." Maya stepped forward. "The evidence is verified by a third-party forensics team." The judge nodded. "This is no longer just fraud. Recess until tomorrow." Outside, Daniel caught up with her. "You just saved my life." "I'm saving the truth," she said. "There's a difference." The courtroom buzzed with a new energy, less mockery, more respect. Maya walked in, her binder heavier with new evidence. A witness had come forward. Sarah, a junior Summit employee, barely 23, who'd seen it all. Maya met her the night before in a diner, her hands trembling as she clutched a coffee mug. "I heard Voss tell the team to change timestamps," Sarah said. "They wanted to ruin Mr. Harper so no one would defy them again." "You're sure about testifying?" Maya asked. Sarah nodded. "I can't stay silent anymore." Now in court, Maya stood. "Your Honor, We have a witness with first-hand knowledge of Summit's actions. Sarah took the stand, her voice shaking but clear. I was in the room when Richard Voss ordered us to alter records. He said the goal wasn't winning, it was destroying. The gallery gasped. Vanessa's replacement, a nervous lawyer, stammered, "This is hearsay." Maya held up a deposition, not when it's backed by sworn statements and server logs. The judge leaned forward. "If this holds, we're looking at criminal charges." Recess was called, but the air felt charged, like a storm about to break. Outside, Sarah hugged Maya. "I was so scared, but you made me believe I could do this." "You did it yourself," Maya said. That night, the threats escalated. Maya's phone buzzed. "Unknown number." "You think you're untouchable?" a voice growled. "Truth's expensive, Miss Carter. I'm already broke," she said, hanging up. But fear gnawed at her. Her apartment wasn't safe. She stayed in Hoboken, sleeping lightly, her binder by her side. Jake called at midnight. Voss's IP logs check out. The memo's his, and Summit's board is panicking. Stock's down 15%. "They're cracking," Maya said. "Keep digging." By morning, news broke. Voss had vanished. Summit issued a weak denial, but the public smelled blood. Maya met Daniel at his office. He looked older, worn. "I don't know who to trust anymore." "Trust the evidence," she said, showing him the logs. He exhaled. "You're relentless." "Someone has to be," she said. In court, she presented Sarah's testimony and the logs. "Your Honor, Summit's counsel orchestrated a fraud to seize Mr. Harper's company. These records prove it." The judge read silently, then spoke. "I'm dismissing the case and referring this to the U.S. Attorney's Office." The room erupted in murmurs. Daniel leaned over. "You didn't just win. You changed the game." Maya kept her face calm, but inside, her heart soared. Outside, reporters swarmed. "Is it true you were a housekeeper?" one shouted. Maya turned, her voice steady. "Still am. Don't need a fancy office to see what's wrong. Just a voice and the truth." The crowd went quiet, then roared with questions. She walked away, head high, knowing the fight wasn't over. The case was done, but Maya's work wasn't. She stood outside the courthouse, the autumn wind tugging at her coat. Daniel joined her, his tie loose. "They're calling you the housekeeper who took down an empire." "Let them," she said. "They don't know what it's like to study law in a basement with roaches on the walls." He nodded. "You saved more than my company. You saved me." "Don't get soft on me now," she said, half smiling. He laughed, a real one, the first she'd heard from him. That night, she sat at her table, the binder closed, but not packed away. She opened her laptop and typed, "The People's Justice Project." Her dream wasn't a corner office or a big paycheck. It was a world where workers, cleaners, whistleblowers could fight back without fear. She'd start small. Free legal clinics, translated forms, a hotline for people like Sarah. A year later, she stood in a community center in Harlem, facing a room of workers, drivers, nurses, baristas. "Most of you know my story," she said. "I didn't plan to be a lawyer. I planned to survive. But I saw something wrong, and I spoke. And everything changed." The crowd listened, rapt. "Justice doesn't live in fancy halls," she said. "It starts in break rooms, in kitchens, with someone saying, 'This isn't right,' even if no one listens at first." They clapped, not loud, but real. A young woman approached after clutching a law book. "I want to fight like you," she said. Maya smiled. "Start by listening to people's stories. That's where the real work begins." Back home, her phone buzzed. A woman's voice, soft, scared. "I'm Lisa. I clean offices in Queens. I found something I shouldn't have. They told me to forget it, but I can't." Maya leaned back. "You're not alone. Let's start there." The city glowed outside her window, alive with stories waiting to be heard. She wasn't just a housekeeper anymore. She was a voice, a spark, a reminder that truth could break through even the thickest walls. And she'd keep speaking, because justice wasn't a moment. It was a movement. The world didn't stop turning after the courtroom doors closed. Maya's victory wasn't a neat bow on a story. It was a crack in a dam, letting truth rush through. She sat at her table, the same one where she'd once helped her brother with homework, now covered in plans for the People's Justice Project. Her fight had shown her something. Justice wasn't just about winning. It was about building something that lasted, something that gave people like her, people who'd been invisible, a chance to be seen. She thought of her father, who'd raised her on stories of resilience, teaching her chess on a rickety table in the Bronx. "Don't let them forget your name," he'd said. She hadn't. Now she was making sure others could claim their names too. The threats hadn't stopped, but they were quieter now, like a beast licking its wounds. Maya wasn't naive. She knew power didn't surrender easily. But fear no longer ruled her. She'd faced a system that expected her to bow, and she'd stood taller. Every call she got, every scared voice like Lisa's, was proof she was doing something right. The city outside her window wasn't just a skyline anymore. It was a map of battles, of people waiting for someone to listen. Maya closed her laptop, her heart steady. She'd begun in silence, but she'd end in light, carrying a legacy that would outlast her. And that was enough. Maya Carter returned to Daniel Harper's sprawling estate the next morning, her sneakers leaving faint prints on the polished marble. The air smelled of coffee and old money, but she wasn't there to clean. She carried her binder, heavier now with new evidence, each page a weapon she'd sharpened in the quiet of her Brooklyn apartment. Daniel sat at his desk, his usual arrogance dulled by the weight of the case. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers with something new, not quite trust, but close. "You didn't have to come back," he said. "Most people would have run by now." Maya set her binder down. "I don't run from fights. I can win." She opened to a contract, pointing to a clause buried in fine print. "This was signed while you were in Napa last spring. You said your assistant Tom handled it. Did you see the file yourself?" Daniel leaned back, rubbing his jaw. "Tom sent me a link. I clicked and signed. Standard stuff." Maya's voice was calm but sharp. "Where's Tom now?" "He quit. Said the pressure was too much." She slid a photo across the desk. A contract draft from Tom's old office, metadata showing a New Jersey IP address, not Chicago like the prosecution claimed. Or he needed to vanish before someone asked questions. Daniel's face tightened. "You're saying Tom set me up?" "I'm saying someone used your trust like a trapdoor." Maya left the estate and headed to a midtown co-working space Tom had used. The office was chaos, drawers open, papers strewn like someone had fled in a panic. Her pulse quickened. On the floor, she found a folder with 2 contract drafts, one marked Chicago, the other New Jersey. Proof someone had tampered with the evidence. She tucked it into her binder, her hands steady despite the fear creeping up her spine. This wasn't just about Daniel anymore. It was about a machine that chewed up people like her and spit them out. Back in court, she stood before the judge, her voice cutting through the murmurs. Your Honor, these drafts show conflicting metadata, proving the contract revisions weren't Mr. Harper's doing. The prosecutor, Vanessa Reed, stood, her heels clicking like gunfire. Objection. This is unverified. Maya didn't flinch. The forensics report in your hands verifies it. Traced to Tom Ellis's hard drive. Access the day he disappeared. The judge's eyes narrowed as he read. The gallery, once full of snickers, now hung on her words. She pressed on. The revised clause uses European legal terms, not standard for Harper Enterprises. This points to an outside hand, likely Summit Partners. Vanessa's jaw clenched. We need time to review. Maya held up another page. The evidence is time-stamped and notarized. The judge nodded. This suggests tampering. We'll recess to investigate. Daniel leaned over, his voice low. You're turning their game against them. Maya kept her eyes on the judge. I'm just playing by the rules. They forgot exist. That night, she found an envelope slipped under her apartment door. No name, just Summit's logo embossed in gold. Her heart thudded as she opened it. Inside was a memo, dated 6 months before the lawsuit, outlining a plan to pressure Daniel into surrendering his company through legal maneuvers. Strategic realignment, it called it. But Maya saw it for what it was, a blueprint to destroy him. She sat at her kitchen table, the memo spread out beside her notes. Her sandwich went untouched, the coffee went cold. This wasn't just fraud. It was a calculated betrayal orchestrated by Summit's legal counsel, Richard Voss. She jotted his name, circling it twice. He was the key. Her phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. You're digging too deep, a voice said, low and cold. Bears don't like being poked. Who is this? She asked, her grip tightening. Someone who knows you're out of your league. The call ended. Maya stared at the phone, her breath shallow. She'd grown up with fear. Dark alleys, eviction notices, her mother's tired eyes. But this was different. This was a shadow with a voice, and it knew her name. She forced herself to move, tucking the memo into a plastic sleeve. She couldn't stop now. The truth was too close, and she carried it too far. The next morning, she took the subway to a diner in Queens to meet Jake, her old classmate turned reporter. He slid a folder across the table, his eyes scanning the room. Voss has ties to an offshore firm that builds legal traps to force buyouts. 2 whistleblowers spoke out. One's gone. Car accident, no autopsy. Maya's stomach churned. You're sure? Jake nodded. You're kicking a hornet's nest. She leaned back, the memo burning a hole in her bag. I don't have a choice. Back at her apartment, she spread out the evidence. Contracts, the memo, Jake's notes. The pieces were coming together, but the puzzle was bigger than she'd imagined. Summit wasn't just after Daniel's money. They wanted his empire, his name, his legacy, and they'd rigged the game to make sure he couldn't fight back. She thought of her father, his voice echoing from childhood. Don't let them box you in, Maya. You're stronger than their walls. She closed her eyes, holding on to that strength. Tomorrow she'd face the courtroom again, not as a housekeeper, but as a force they couldn't ignore. The memo sat on Maya Carter's kitchen table like a live wire, its words searing into her mind. Summit Partners had planned to dismantle Daniel Harper's empire long before the lawsuit, and Richard Voss, their legal mastermind, was the architect. Maya's hands didn't shake as she traced the memo's text, but her heart raced. She was close, too close to unraveling a truth that could shake boardrooms across New York. But with every step, the shadows grew darker. Her phone buzzed again, an unknown number flashing on the screen. She let it ring, her jaw tight. No more games. She'd heard enough threats. The voicemail chimed, and a gravelly voice filled the silence. "You're making enemies, Miss Carter. Choose your battles wisely." She deleted it, her breath steadying. Fear was a familiar guest, but she'd learned to lock it out. Growing up in Brooklyn, she'd walked past danger every day. Gang corners, leering strangers, the weight of a world that didn't expect her to rise. This was just a new kind of alley, and she'd cross it the same way. Head up, eyes sharp. She met Jake, her reporter friend, at a diner in Queens, the air thick with grease and late-night chatter. He slid a USB drive across the table, his voice low. Voss's IP logs. They matched the memo's metadata. Summit's servers sent it, no question. Maya's fingers closed around the drive. "Anything else?" Jake leaned in, his eyes darting to the door. "Voss has a history. 2 sealed whistleblower cases, both tied to forced buyouts. One guy ended up dead. Ruled an accident, but the family never bought it." Her stomach twisted, but she nodded. "Thanks, Jake. Keep this quiet." He smirked. "You're the one making noise." Back in her Hoboken hideout, a borrowed apartment smelling of lavender and old wood, Maya plugged the USB into her laptop. The files were damning. Emails between Voss and Summit's board, spreadsheets budgeting for litigation as a weapon, even a draft of the forged contract clause. They'd planned to bleed Daniel dry, legally and publicly, until he surrendered his company. She printed the key pages, highlighting Voss's name. This wasn't just about saving Daniel anymore. It was about exposing a system that let men like Voss twist justice into a tool for greed. The next morning, she returned to Daniel's estate. He was pacing his office, his tie undone, eyes bloodshot. "You look like you haven't slept," she said, setting her binder down. He stopped, his voice low. "I trusted Tom. I trusted Summit. Now I don't know who's real." Maya slid the memo across his desk. "This is real. They planned this months before you signed anything." Daniel read it, his face paling. "They wanted my company, win or lose." She nodded. "And they'd have framed you to make sure you couldn't fight back." He sank into his chair, rubbing his temples. "What now?" "We seal the evidence," she said. "If we submit this without airtight proof, Vanessa Reed will tear it apart." Daniel exhaled. "My IT guy can trace the digital trail." "No," Maya said firmly. "No one else yet. We don't know who's clean." He looked at her, a flicker of respect in his eyes. "You're calling the shots now." "Someone has to," she said. That afternoon, she took the subway to a storage facility in Jersey City, a lead from Tom's old planner. The locker held a manila envelope, sealed with a red wax stamp. A single letter, V. Voss. Inside was a second USB, this one with audio files. She listened through earbuds, her heart pounding. Voss's voice, calm and cold, instructing a team to alter metadata and route signatures through a Chicago VPN. "We make it look like Harper's work," he said. "No one checks the fine print." Maya saved the files, her mind racing. This was the smoking gun. In court the next day, the room felt different. Less laughter, more tension. Vanessa strutted in, her smile tight, sensing the shift. Maya stood, her voice clear. "Your Honor, we submit a memo from the Summit Partners Counsel, Richard Voss, outlining a plan to defraud Mr. Harper through forged contracts." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Vanessa shot up. This is unverified speculation. Maya handed the bailiff a folder. It's verified by metadata logs and audio recordings from Voss himself, recovered from a secure storage locker rented by Tom Ellis. The judge's eyes widened as he read. Vanessa's face froze. "We request a delay," she stammered. Maya stepped forward. "The evidence is time-stamped and notarized by a third-party forensics firm." The judge nodded slowly. "This suggests a conspiracy. We'll recess to review." Daniel leaned over, his voice a whisper. "You just dropped a bomb." Maya kept her eyes forward. "Good. Let it burn." That night she sat in the Hoboken apartment, the USB drives hidden in a hollow book. Her phone buzzed again. "Unknown number," she answered, her voice steady. "What do you want?" A pause, then a chuckle. "You're brave, but bravery breaks. Stop now, or you'll lose more than a case." She hung up, her hands trembling for the first time. She thought of her mother, working double shifts to keep the lights on, telling her, "You're tougher than the world, Maya." She clung to that, forcing the fear down. The next morning she found a note slipped under the door. Plain paper, typed words, "You can't hide forever." She burned it in the sink, watching the ashes curl. They were scared, and scared people made mistakes. She met Jake at the diner again, her eyes scanning for the man she'd seen watching her at the courthouse. "He's gone quiet," Jake said, handing her a new file. "Voss hasn't been to his office in 2 days. Summit's board is circling the wagons." Maya nodded. "They know it's crumbling." Back in court, she presented the audio files. "Your Honor, these recordings confirm Voss's role in orchestrating the fraud. The metadata aligns with Summit's servers, and the voice has been verified by forensic analysis." The judge listened through headphones, his face unreadable. Vanessa's team squirmed. The gallery was silent, every eye on Maya. She'd walked into this room a nobody, but now she held the truth like a torch. The judge spoke. "If this holds, we're beyond fraud. This is criminal. Recess until tomorrow." Outside, Daniel caught up with her, the city's pulse loud around them. "You're not just fighting for me anymore, are you?" "No," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I'm fighting for everyone they thought they could bury." He nodded, a shadow of a smile on his lips. "Keep fighting, Maya. The world's starting to listen." The courtroom felt alive now, charged with something heavier than curiosity, respect, maybe, or fear. Maya Carter stood at the defense table, her binder open, its pages worn but unyielding. She'd spent the night in Hoboken, poring over evidence, her eyes burning from the glow of her laptop. The audio files from Richard Voss were damning, but she needed more. A voice from inside Summit Partners to seal the case. That voice came in the form of Sarah Miller, a young Summit employee who'd reached out to Maya in secret. They'd met at a diner, Sarah's hands trembling around a coffee mug. "I saw it all," she'd whispered. "Voss told us to change timestamps, to make it look like Mr. Harper's fault. I can't stay quiet anymore." Maya had looked into her eyes, seeing her own fear mirrored back. "You don't have to," she'd said. "I'll stand with you." Now in court, Maya's voice was steady, cutting through the tension. "Your Honor, we have a witness with first-hand knowledge of Summit's fraud." Sarah took the stand, her face pale but her chin high. The gallery leaned in, the air thick with anticipation. "I was in the room," Sarah said, her voice shaking but clear. "Richard Voss ordered us to alter contract records. He said the goal wasn't to win. It was to ruin Mr. Harper's name so no one would challenge Summit again." Gasps echoed. Vanessa Reed's replacement, A stiff lawyer named Paul Grayson stood. "This is hearsay, Your Honor." Maya didn't blink. Not when it's backed by sworn depositions and server logs submitted in Exhibit F. The judge nodded, his eyes scanning the documents. "Proceed, Miss Carter." Maya handed the bailiff a USB drive. These recordings, verified by forensic analysis, capture Voss instructing his team to forge signatures through a Chicago VPN. The metadata ties directly to Summit's network. The judge listened through headphones, his face unreadable. Daniel Harper leaned forward, his hands clasped tight. Maya caught his eye, a silent nod passing between them. He wasn't the same man who'd scoffed at her days ago. He was listening now, and so was the room. Sarah spoke again, her voice steadier. "I kept copies of the original contracts. Voss thought we'd destroyed them, but I couldn't. They're in the evidence packet." The judge raised an eyebrow. "This is significant." "Mr. Grayson, your response?" Grayson cleared his throat, his confidence crumbling. "We need time to verify." Maya stepped forward. "The evidence is already verified by a third-party firm with chain of custody logs included." The gallery murmured, the tide turning. Vanessa's absence was telling. She'd withdrawn that morning, citing a conflict of interest. Summit was unraveling, and Maya was the thread pulling it apart. The judge spoke, his voice grave. "If this testimony holds, we're looking at criminal charges. Recess until tomorrow." Outside, Sarah hugged Maya, her breath shaky. "I was terrified, but you made me believe I could do this." "You did it yourself," Maya said, her voice soft. "You just needed someone to stand beside you." That night, the threats came faster. Maya's phone buzzed as she sat in the Hoboken apartment, the glow of her laptop casting shadows on the walls. "Unknown number." She answered, her voice like steel. "What now? You think you've won?" A man's voice sneered. "Truth breaks, Miss Carter." "So do people." "I'm still standing," she said, hanging up. But her hands trembled. She thought of her father, his voice a lifeline in her memory. "You're tougher than their games, baby girl." She clung to that, forcing the fear down. Her apartment in Brooklyn had been trashed days ago, a warning she hadn't ignored. She'd moved her evidence, USB drives, printed memos, to safe spots. One in a hollow book, another hidden in her freezer. If they came for her, the truth would outlive her. She met Jake at the diner again, his eyes scanning the room for tales. "Voss is gone," he said, sliding her a new file. "Left his office 2 days ago, no trace. Summit stock is tanking, down 20%. "They're scared," Maya said, her voice low. "They should be." Jake leaned in. "You're a target now. I've got a guy who can watch your building, no questions asked." She hesitated, then nodded. "Do it." Quietly. Back in court, Maya presented Sarah's copies of the original contracts. "Your Honor, these prove the revisions were inserted by Summit, not Mr. Harper. The language shifts, European terms, not U.S., point to Voss's offshore partners." The judge read in silence, then looked up. "This is no longer a civil case. We're in criminal territory." Daniel leaned over, his voice a whisper. "You're not just saving me. You're tearing their world down." Maya kept her eyes on the judge. "I'm building something better." That afternoon, she found Daniel at his estate, his office dim, the weight of the case aging him. "I don't know how to repay you," he said. "Don't," she said. "Just give me access to every Summit file, emails, memos, board minutes. No more secrets." He nodded. "You'll have it by morning." That night, a new envelope waited under her door. Plain typed words. "Stop, or you'll lose everything." She burned it in the sink, the smoke curling like a promise. She wasn't stopping. She emailed Jake, attaching copies of the evidence. "If anything happens to me, get this to the press." He replied, "You're crazy, but I've got you." The next morning, Daniel delivered a stack of Summit emails, board minutes, proof of Voss's late-night deals with Tom. Maya read them, her heart pounding. They'd timed every move when Daniel was distracted, traveling, trusting. She thought of her mother working 3 jobs, never complaining. That strength ran in her veins. In court, she laid out the emails. "Your Honor, these show Voss and Tom Ellis plotting to forge documents while Mr. Harper was unaware. The timestamps match his travel records." Grayson stammered, "We question the source." Maya held up a notarized chain of custody report. "The source is Summit's own servers, verified independently." The judge nodded. "This is compelling. We'll recess to prepare for a full evidentiary hearing." Outside, reporters swarmed. "Miss Carter, are you really a housekeeper?" one shouted. Maya turned, her voice calm. "I am. And I'm proof you don't need a suit to fight for what's right." The crowd roared, but she walked away, her focus unbroken. That night, she sat with Jake, the diner quiet. "You're trending," he said, showing her a headline. "The housekeeper who shook an empire." She shook her head. "It's not about me, it's about them, the ones who never get a chance to speak." He nodded. "Then keep speaking, Maya. They're listening now." Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The truth was louder than their threats, and she was ready for whatever came next. The truth was a wildfire now, and Maya Carter was holding the torch. The courtroom hummed with a new kind of energy, less mockery, more reverence, as she walked to the defense table, her binder heavier with evidence that could topple Summit partners. Sarah Miller's testimony had cracked the case open, but Maya knew it wasn't enough to win. Summit's machine was built to bury mistakes, and men like Richard Voss didn't vanish without a plan. She'd spent the night in Hoboken, her laptop glowing in the dim apartment, cross-referencing emails and financial records. A new lead had surfaced, a wire transfer to a Swiss account, tied to Voss, dated days before the lawsuit. It was the final piece, but it came at a cost. Her phone hadn't stopped buzzing with threats. The latest was a text, blunt and cold. "You're out of time." She'd stared at it, her heart thudding, then deleted it. Fear was a shadow, but she'd learned to walk through it. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. "You don't back down, Maya. You build up." She was building now, for herself, for Sarah, for every invisible worker who'd been silenced. In court, the judge's voice cut through the tension. "We'll hear additional disclosures from the defense." Maya stood, her voice steady. "Your Honor, we submit Exhibit G, a wire transfer to an account linked to Richard Voss, dated 1 week before Summit's lawsuit. It proves they budgeted for this fraud." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Paul Grayson, Summit's new lawyer, shot up. "This is speculative." Maya handed the bailiff a folder. "The transfer is verified by the Swiss bank's audit logs, with Voss as the beneficiary. We also have emails between Voss and Summit's board, discussing litigation as a tool to seize Mr. Harper's company." The judge's eyes narrowed as he read. Daniel Harper leaned forward, his hands clasped, watching Maya like she was rewriting his future. She was. Grayson stammered, "We need time to review." Maya didn't pause. "The evidence is notarized, with a chain of custody report included." The judge nodded. "This is substantial. Miss Carter, do you have more?" She took a breath. We have a witness, Sarah Miller, who's testified to Voss's orders to forge records. But there's another voice. Tom Ellis's planner, found in his abandoned office, with a note, Swiss packet, and a code. That code led us to a storage locker with audio files of Voss planning the fraud. The gallery buzzed. Grayson's face paled. We object to the planner's authenticity. Maya held up a photo. The planner's dated entries matched Tom's travel records, verified by Harper Enterprises. The judge leaned back. This suggests a coordinated effort. We'll recess to prepare for a full hearing. Daniel whispered, You're not just winning. You're rewriting the rules. Maya kept her eyes on the judge. I'm making sure they can't hide anymore. That night, the threats escalated. She returned to Hoboken, her steps quick, scanning for the man she'd seen watching her at the courthouse. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She answered, her voice like stone. What do you want? A chuckle, low and venomous. You're digging your own grave. Truce a heavy shovel. I've carried heavier, she said, hanging up. Her hands shook, but she forced them still. She thought of her mother, folding laundry at midnight, whispering, You're my fighter, Maya. That strength kept her moving. She met Jake at the diner, his eyes darting to the door. Summit's board is cracking, he said, handing her a new file. Leaked minutes show they knew about Voss's plan. Stocks down 25%. Maya nodded. They're running scared. Jake leaned in. You're a target now. My cousin's got a safe house in Jersey if you need it. She hesitated, then nodded. I'll think about it. Back in her apartment, she found the door ajar. Her heart stopped. Papers were scattered, her lamp shattered. They hadn't taken anything, just left chaos to prove they could. She backed out, calling Jake from the hallway. Someone broke in again. They're not subtle anymore. Stay at the safe house, he said. Tonight. She agreed, her voice tight. In Jersey, surrounded by quiet suburbs, she spread out her evidence. The wire transfer, the planner, Sarah's testimony. They were enough to bury Summit, but only if she stayed alive. She emailed copies to Jake and a lawyer friend just in case. If they came for her, the truth would survive. The next morning, Daniel met her at his estate, his face grim. Voss is still missing. Summit's denying everything, but their investors are bailing. Maya slid him the transfer records. This ties Voss to the money. We're not just dismissing their case. We're countersuing. Fraud. Defamation. The works. Daniel's eyes widened. You're going for blood. No, she said. I'm going for justice. They thought no one would check. In court, she laid out the final evidence. Your Honor, these records show Summit's board approved Voss's plan to frame Mr. Harper. The wire transfer funded their offshore accounts, and these emails confirm their intent to destroy his reputation. Grayson stood, his voice weak. We dispute the email's context. Maya handed the bailiff a new report. The emails are verified by forensic analysis, with IP logs tracing to Summit servers. The judge read in silence, then spoke. This is no longer a lawsuit. It's a criminal conspiracy. I'm referring this to the U.S. Attorney's Office and dismissing Summit's case. The room erupted in murmurs. Daniel leaned over, his voice low. You didn't just save me. You broke their empire. Maya kept her face calm, but inside, her heart soared. Outside, reporters swarmed. Miss Carter, how does it feel to take down a giant? She faced them, her voice steady. I didn't take down anything. I just held up the truth. And it spoke for itself. The crowd roared, but she walked away, her focus unbroken. That night she sat with Jake, the diner's neon glow softening the tension. "You're a legend," he said, showing her a headline, "The housekeeper who changed the game." She shook her head. "It's not about me. It's about the ones who come after." He nodded. "Then keep fighting, Maya. They need you." Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She didn't answer. The threats were noise now, drowned out by the truth she'd set free. She thought of Sarah, of her father, of every worker who'd been told to stay quiet. This was for them. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, she felt the weight lift, just a little. The world was listening, and she wasn't alone. The courtroom doors swung shut, but the echo of Maya Carter's victory lingered like a heartbeat. The case was over. Summit Partners' lawsuit dismissed, their fraud exposed, their empire cracking under the weight of truth. But Maya didn't feel finished. She stood outside the courthouse, the autumn wind sharp against her face, her binder clutched tight. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed, but her eyes were fixed on the city skyline, a map of battles yet to come. Daniel Harper stepped beside her, his tie loose, his arrogance replaced by something quieter. "You changed everything," he said. "Not yet," she replied, her voice soft but firm. "I just opened a door." That night, in the Hoboken apartment, she sat at a borrowed table, her binder closed for the first time in weeks. The threats hadn't stopped. A new note had arrived, slipped under the door. "You'll never be safe." She burned it in the sink, the ashes a silent vow. Fear was real, but so was her resolve. She opened her laptop and typed, "The People's Justice Project." It wasn't a dream of glory or a corner office. It was a lifeline for people like her. Cleaners, drivers, whistleblowers, who'd been told their voices didn't matter. She'd start small. Free legal clinics, translated forms, a hotline for the scared and silenced. Her father's words rang in her ears. "Make them remember your name, Maya." She was building something that would outlast her, a legacy carved in justice. The next morning, Daniel called. "I'm giving you full access to Summit's files. Everything we have. No more walls." Maya nodded, though he couldn't see her. "Good. Let's make sure no one else gets crushed." She spent the day sorting emails, board minutes, proof of Summit's deeper schemes. One name kept surfacing, Richard Voss, still missing, his shadow looming over every deal. She emailed Jake, her reporter friend. "Any word on Voss?" He replied, "Nothing." Like he vanished into thin air. "But Summit's board is bleeding. 2 resigned this morning." Maya leaned back, her mind racing. They were scrambling, but she wasn't done. She met Sarah Miller at a coffee shop, the young whistleblower's face brighter now, though her hands still shook. "I can't believe we did it," Sarah said. "You did it," Maya corrected. "You spoke when it was hardest." Sarah smiled, tentative but real. "My dad wants to meet you. He says you're like the heroes in his old stories." Maya's throat tightened. "I'd like that." That evening she visited Sarah's father, a wiry man named Joe, at his hardware store in Queens. The front window, smashed by Summit's thugs, was new, the glass gleaming. "You're Maya," he said, his voice thick with a Brooklyn accent. "My girl said you're tougher than nails." Maya smiled. "She learned it from you." Joe poured her coffee, his hand steady despite the scars of hard years. When Sarah was little, she'd hide in the back, reading comics, saying she'd be a hero. I laughed, thought the world didn't give capes to girls like her. Then you walked into that courtroom. "Thank you." Maya sipped the coffee, warm and bitter. I didn't do it alone. Joe nodded. But you started it. They talked for hours. Like family she hadn't known she'd missed. The next week, Maya stood before a crowd at a community center in Harlem, her sweater and jeans a quiet rebellion against the suits she'd faced. Justice isn't born in marble halls, she said, her voice carrying the weight of every late night spent studying. It starts in break rooms, in basements with someone saying, "This isn't right," even when no one listens. The room, drivers, nurses, janitors, clapped, their applause steady, real. A young woman clutching a law book who approached after. "I want to fight like you," she said. Maya thumbed the book's worn pages. Start with their stories, their pain, their names. That's where the work begins. Driving home, Maya passed a mural in Harlem, freshly painted, vibrant under the streetlights. It was her, apron and all, arms crossed, eyes fierce. Behind her, words in bold, "She didn't ask for permission." She laughed, a quick burst of joy, and snapped a photo. Not for fame, but for proof something had shifted. That night, her phone buzzed. A woman's voice, hesitant, scared. "I'm Carla. I work nights at a warehouse in Newark. I found records. Something's not right. They told me to shut up, but I can't." Maya leaned back, her heart steady. "You're not alone. Let's start there." The city glowed outside, alive with voices waiting to be heard. A year later, Maya stood in a small room in New York's legal district. No cameras, just workers and folding chairs. Mechanics, baristas, aides. A plaque on the lectern read, "The People's Justice Project. Free legal access for every worker." "Most of you know my story," she began, her voice warm, like a friend sharing a secret. "I didn't plan to be a lawyer. I planned to survive. But I saw something wrong, and I spoke. And the world changed." She paused, letting the words settle. "We've trained 30 volunteers, opened 4 offices, translated forms into Spanish, Creole, Mandarin. We're not a firm. We're a promise. To listen, to fight, to stand with you." The crowd clapped, not loud, but deep, like a heartbeat. Daniel stood at the back, his company leaner now, but honest. He'd hired Maya as an ethics consultant, but she'd redirected the salary to this room. After the talk, a man approached, his hands calloused from years on a factory line. "My boss fired me for reporting safety violations. Can you help?" Maya nodded. "We'll start tomorrow. Tell me everything." Later, she walked the streets of Newark, the air cool, the weight of the past year settling into her bones. She passed a bodega, the owner waving. "You're still on the news, Maya. Keep giving 'em hell." She smiled, faint but real. That's the plan. Back home, she sat at her table, the binder now joined by a new folder. Legislation draft, whistleblower protection. The fight wasn't over. It never would be. But for the first time, she felt peace. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of purpose. Her phone buzzed. Another voice, another story. "I'm David. I work at a hospital. I saw something I shouldn't have." Maya listened, her heart open. The city was calling, and she was ready to answer. The world kept spinning, but Maya Carter had carved her place in it. She sat at her kitchen table, the same one where she'd once dreamed over law books, now covered with plans for the People's Justice Project. Victory hadn't erased the scars, the late nights, the threats, the moments she doubted herself. But it had shown her something. Justice wasn't a finish line. It was a road built by hands like hers for people like Carla, David, Sarah. She thought of her father, his chess games and Malcolm X quotes, his belief that one voice could shift the board. He hadn't lived to see her fight, but she felt him in every step. The threats were quieter now, like a storm that had lost its rage. Maya wasn't naive. Power didn't sleep forever. But she wasn't alone anymore. Every call, every scared voice reaching out was proof of a world waking up. She closed her laptop, the city's glow soft through her window. She'd started in shadows, a housekeeper no one saw, but she'd ended in light, building a stage for the silenced. Her legacy wasn't in headlines. It was in the people who'd carry her fight forward. Maya took a deep breath, her heart full. The road was long, but she was walking it, and that was enough.